So the first question would be the definition of the usage of the conceptual research in tourism.
Yeah, well, I think the important thing there is that concepts are important in tourism, particularly big concepts that can frame our ideas and thinking. So we've got some very interesting concepts in tourism, concepts like sustainable tourism, concepts like pro-poor tourism. I'm very interested to see how we arrive at those concepts and the power of those concepts, the power that those concepts have.
Yes, but when you arrive to some conclusion, do you have some proposals how to develop things further?
Well, I think the first thing to do, so in conceptual research, it's important to create the concepts first of all, and then you have to think how you're going to operationalize the concepts, so how those concepts are going to have an impact in the world.
So is it your duty to make operationalization or not?
Well, that's a very interesting idea, because that's the idea of the philosopher in his chair, or the philosopher rolling up his sleeves for action. And I think philosophers should start off in their chairs, but I think they should be prepared to think how those ideas can be operationalized.
If they are well paid for that.
Absolutely.
Second question is about what was nicely said, that what is the good life in tourism?
Yeah. So I think this is an important philosophical question. So I think it's very important that we get tourism right at what you might call a production and consumption level. So we need to produce good services, we need consumers to have good services. But over and above that, we need to think, but what kind of tourism do we want to create? Okay? What kind of things do we want to achieve as a result of tourism? What kind of buildings do we want to create? What do our buildings look like? What do our destinations look like? Who is tourism for? Is it for locals or is it for tourists? Can we use tourism to achieve some wider social goals? Can we use it to reduce poverty, for example? So I think this is all thinking about what is the good life? What do we want to achieve? What are our ends? And in modern life, we're so obsessed with the everyday that we don't spend enough thinking what we want to achieve in the future, in my belief.
The other thing is, you have mentioned the phenomena of alienation in tourism.
Yes.
Can you give us some examples and how to fight the alienation?
How to fight the alienation? Well, of course, actually alienation comes in tourism in two ways. So actually Dean McCannell said that many tourists undertake tourism or become tourists because they want to escape the alienation of modern life. So Dean McCannell basically said that people are very alienated through modern methods of living and production, and that sometimes they want to be tourists because they want to find places and people who are more in touch with reality, more in touch with the planet, more in touch with the everyday. So interesting enough, tourism is a possible escape route from everyday alienation, number one, okay? But then we can also say that tourism is always projected as a big, happy industry, and that we're all very happy in tourism. But I think that we can become alienated within tourism. So sometimes we don't sufficiently connect with a place we want to be, and we find there's a distance, and we find it quite difficult to connect with a place or a landscape or nature.
Good. And finally, according to your research or your thinking, tourism is very important aspect of everyday life.
Yeah, so I think this is something we need to be aware of, really. And that is, in the past, we've treated tourism as something different, okay? Something a little bit extra, something at the side, at the peripheral of society, something people do for 2 weeks, or something people do at a weekend, okay? But tourism has now become a very everyday issue in society, okay? So people spend a lot of their time being tourists. People are tourists many times in a year, formally, informally. So it's it's everywhere. It's everywhere. And because of that, because tourism is so much more an important part of the economy in society, tourism itself contributes to building society and places. Okay, so it has become part of the everyday and part of the process of constituting society. Okay, it's not just a product; it's also an input into society as well.
So there is a lot of philosophy in tourism.
There's not enough philosophy in tourism.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.